Imagine you're at a dinner party, right? And a guest is telling a story. And frankly, it's like mildly amusing at best.
Right, maybe a polite chuckle kind of story.
Exactly. But suddenly everyone around the table is laughing just a little too loudly.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Or, think about that colleague of yours who constantly volunteers for the charity committee,
Hmm,
but you notice they always make absolutely sure the boss is looking when they sign the sign-up sheet.
of course.
Or what about a friend who drops a small fortune on a brand new luxury car and then spends 20 minutes justifying it to you, like insisting that only bought it for the safety features and the German engineering?
Just the engineering, obviously.
Right. And in every single one of these scenarios, the stated reason for the behavior is totally plausible. It's acceptable, maybe even admirable. But is it the real reason?
And that is a deeply uncomfortable question to ask. Because if we're being completely honest with ourselves, we usually just accept those stated reasons at face value.
Yeah, it's easier.
It's so much easier, it smooths over social friction, but the reality operating beneath the surface is, well, it's far more complex and a lot more selfish.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are exploring a massive, comprehensive analysis suite on a highly provocative concept, the elephant in the brain.
It's a fascinating one.
It really is. Our goal today is to track down the darker, unexamined corners of our psyches and basically blast them with floodlights. We're going to look at the hidden motives driving almost everything we do.
Yeah, and the central thesis we're unpacking here, it really challenges how we view our own species. The core premise is that we are almost never aware of the real reasons for our behaviors.
Which is kind of terrifying to think about.
It totally is.
Yeah.
We love to think of ourselves as these, highly rational, altruistic creatures driven by logic and goodwill. But if you strip all that away, we are primates.
Right.
And like all primates, we are driven by hidden, deeply selfish motives. Specifically, a relentless, ongoing competition for status, sex, and power.
Which brings us to why you, listening right now, need to stick with us for this one. Because by the end of this conversation, the way you view every single social interaction, every purchase you make, and every conversation you have, it's going to be fundamentally changed.
Absolutely.
You're going to walk away with a really powerful, if, slightly unsettling lens to understand the real world.
Definitely. And to truly grasp the mechanics of these hidden motives in our modern brains, we can't really start with modern humans. We have to look backward.
Like back to our evolutionary roots.
Exactly, to our evolutionary roots and our animal cousins.
Yeah.
Because long before we were buying luxury cars or laughing at dinner parties, we were navigating cutthroat social hierarchies in the wild.
Okay, let's unpack this because the evolutionary biology setup is super fascinating. Think about chimpanzees, right? They spend hours upon hours grooming each other.
Right, picking through fur.
Yeah, and the surface level explanation, like the stated reason if a chimp could talk, is hygiene. Picking off fleas, removing dirt. But when you look at the social dynamics, this sounds exactly like corporate networking at a company retreat.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like two executives might look like they're just having a casual game of golf or grabbing a coffee, but it's really about who gets to sit next to the CEO at dinner. It's a calculated political maneuver disguised as just a casual activity.
That is a remarkably accurate analogy. And we actually have the data to back that up through the work of primatologist Robin Dunbar.
Oh, what did he find?
Well, he observed that primates continue to groom each other long after their fur is perfectly clean. I mean, if it were genuinely just about hygiene, they would stop the moment the dirt was gone.
That makes total sense. So why do they keep going?
Because it's fundamentally a political act. It's a physical way of saying, I trust you enough to let you behind my back. It forges alliances, and more importantly, it signals hierarchy. Yeah, low-ranked chimps are frequently ignored, and they rarely get groomed in return, regardless of how dirty their fur is.
So the grooming is literally just the vehicle for the politics. But it's not just primates operating this way, right? I was really struck by the example in the sources of the Arabian babblers. These are birds.
Yes, Arabian babblers are amazing because they engage in a behavior known as competitive altruism.
Competitive altruism? That sounds like an oxymoron.
It kind of is. If you watch a flock, you'll see individual birds actively trying to feed other birds, even pushing them out of the way to be the one providing the food.
On the surface, that looks incredibly noble, right? Acting purely for the good of the group, like bird charity.
Exactly, bird charity. But beneath that noble surface, they're actually jockeying for prestige. By being seen as the ultimate provider, they accumulate social credit.
And what does bird social credit actually buy them?
Well, it earns them mating opportunities, for one, and it severely lowers their risk of being kicked out of the flock. The mechanism here is entirely self-interested.
So they aren't helping because they care about the hungry bird.
Not at all. They're helping because they care about their own status within the group.
That's wild. So even in the animal kingdom, what looks like selfless cooperation is often just a sneaky way of surviving and winning. But human brains are vastly more complex than a babbler bird's.
Oh, by orders of magnitude.
Right. So why did we need to evolve such massive energy-draining brains just to survive?
This leads us to a brilliant concept from the analysis called the parable of the redwoods. Think about a redwood forest. The trees grow unnecessarily staggeringly tall,
Right. They're massive.
but they don't actually need to be hundreds of feet high to survive the climate or draw nutrients from the soil. They're that tall for one reason only.
To beat out the other trees.
Exactly. They're competing with other redwoods for sunlight. They are locked in an evolutionary arms race with themselves.
Ah, okay. So our intelligence is basically the height of the redwood. We aren't outsmarting the environment, we're outsmarting the person next to us.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the mechanism behind the social brain hypothesis.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. It means human intelligence didn't primarily evolve so we could invent tools to outsmart predators or survive harsh winters. We evolved our massive brains to compete against each other.
Wow.
We are constantly navigating an incredibly treacherous social landscape, competing in three main games: sex, social status, and politics.
Right, the three big games. We compete for mates, which is sex, which explains why so many distinctive human behaviors like, creating art, playing music, or even having a good sense of humor function essentially like a peacock's tail.
Totally. Elaborate mating displays to show off genetic fitness.
Yeah. And then there's social status, where we compete for friends and allies through either sheer dominance or earned prestige. And finally, politics, forming coalitions to gain power over rival groups.
Spot on. That's the landscape we live in.
But wait, I have to stop you here and push back a little. If humans are locked in this ruthless, selfish competition 24/7, how on earth do we manage to live in cooperative societies?
That is the big question.
Right. Why aren't we just constantly punishing each other for being selfish? Because if I know someone is obviously just using me for status, I'm not going to cooperate with them.
That is the crucial pivot point in the whole theory. To manage this, our hunter-gatherer ancestors developed strict social norms.
Okay.
Because they lived in small egalitarian groups, they managed this through tools like weapons and gossip.
Gossip was a tool for survival.
Oh, absolutely. It allowed a coalition of weaker members to gang up and enforce rules against the strongest, most dominant individuals. The group enforced severe norms against bragging, currying favor, hoarding resources, and generally acting on selfish motives.
So if you were caught being overtly selfish, you could be exiled or killed.
Exactly. It was incredibly dangerous to be seen as selfish.
Okay, but humans clearly still act selfishly today. I mean, all the time. If society is so historically hardwired to punish selfishness, how do we get away with cheating in broad daylight?
Because along with our big brains, we evolved a highly sophisticated ability to cheat. We use something called a fig leaf.
This concept of the fig leaf completely changed how I see daily interactions. It reminds me of a teenager getting caught sleeping in the middle of a math class.
Right, classic scenario.
The teacher walks over, taps the desk, wakes them up, and the teenager immediately jolts up and says, "I wasn't sleeping, I was just resting my eyes."
Which is hilarious.
It's a completely ridiculous excuse. The teacher knows it's a lie, the student knows it's a lie, but somehow it creates just enough plausible deniability to avoid a detention.
That is the perfect illustration of a fig leaf in action. A fig leaf is a flimsy, often ridiculous justification that allows people to violate a social norm without triggering punishment.
And why do we let people get away with it?
It comes down to a very basic human trait. We are fundamentally lazy. For minor social sins, it's just not worth the cognitive and social effort for the group to call you out, gather evidence, and enforce the rules.
So the fig leaf gives everyone an out.
Yes. If you provide a ready-made excuse, like resting your eyes, you make it incredibly difficult for others to definitively prove your true selfish motives without causing a massive, exhausting scene.
But what's truly terrifying about this is that the deception goes way deeper than just lying to the teacher or our friends. We actually lie to ourselves.
We do.
And there's a massive debate in the sources about why we do this. For a long time, the old school of psychology, people like Sigmund Freud, argued that we deceive ourselves to protect our fragile egos.
Right, the classic defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
We lie to ourselves so we don't feel bad about who we are.
But the new school evolutionary psychologists like Robert Trivers and Robert Kurzban, they completely flipped this assumption on its head.
They do. And the mechanism they propose is chillingly logical. The new school argues that we don't deceive ourselves just to feel better. We deceive ourselves in order to manipulate other people more effectively.
Wait, walk me through the mechanics of that. How does lying to myself help me manipulate you?
Think about the physical act of lying. If you consciously know you are acting selfishly and you try to hide it, your brain is under immense cognitive load. You might give yourself away.
Like sweating or stuttering.
Exactly. You might sweat, your pupils might dilate, your tone might shift, or you might trip over your words. And other humans are incredibly good at detecting these micro-expressions.
Oh, I see.
But if you manage to hide the uncomfortable truth from your own conscious mind, if you genuinely believe your own fig leaf, you don't exhibit any of those physiological tells.
That is insane. So by blinding yourself to your own motives, you become the perfect, undetectable liar.
Precisely.
There's a quote from the sources that really stuck with me. The less we know of our own ugly motives, the easier they are to hide. That perfectly captures the core of the elephant in the brain.
It really does.
The elephant is that massive, selfish motive taking up all the space in our subconscious, dictating our actions, while our conscious mind is just like the PR department, completely unaware of the elephant, spinning a positive narrative for everyone else to hear.
That's a great way to summarize it. Our conscious brain isn't the Oval Office making the decisions. It's the press secretary, rationalizing the decisions after the fact.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. I want to look at how this plays out in everyday life. If our conscious minds are just PR departments covering up for this massive, status-hungry elephant, how does this affect the institutions we interact with every single day?
Well, it scales up massively. If we use fig leaves to hide our selfish motives in one-on-one interactions, it stands to reason we do this on a societal scale.
Let's do a rapid fire through some of these, starting with formal education. The stated reason for school is to learn. But honestly, I have to push back a bit here on the book's provocative claim. The idea that education isn't about learning seems too cynical. Come on, surely we learned something in school. I learned fractions, you know?
Oh, you absolutely learn things. And the system does impart knowledge. But the analytical framework suggests that acquiring knowledge is not the primary evolutionary or societal function of formal education.
Then what is the primary function?
The underlying mechanism is a concept called costly signaling.
Okay, what makes the signal costly and why does that matter?
A signal is only trustworthy if it's hard to fake. If I want to prove I am wealthy, saying I am rich is a cheap signal. Anyone can say it.
Right.
But buying a yacht is a costly signal. It's undeniable proof. In the context of the job market, employers need to know if you are a good worker. Saying I am a hard worker is a cheap signal.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, sitting in a classroom for 4 to 8 years, enduring boring lectures, completing tedious assignments on time, and conforming to strict institutional rules. That is a highly costly signal.
It takes a toll.
It requires time, money, and immense cognitive endurance. By getting a degree, you are just showing what facts you memorized. You are proving your conformity, your conscientiousness, and your ability to endure drudgery.
Wow. So you're basically signaling to an employer that you can sit in a cubicle and meet deadlines without revolting.
Exactly. If it were just about acquiring knowledge, we could all just read encyclopedias for free. But you can't read an encyclopedia on a resume because it doesn't carry the costly signal of institutional conformity.
So the fact that so much of school is boring and feels useless isn't a bug in the system. It's the feature. The suffering is the signal.
Spot on. That is the elephant in the classroom.
That perfectly transitions into the next area conversation. If I'm talking to you right now, or if I'm at a party chatting with a friend, my stated goal is exchanging information. I want to know about their day, they want to know about mine. But what's the elephant actually doing?
The elephant is treating conversation as a competitive market for social status. Listeners generally don't care that much about the specific, practical utility of the information you are giving them.
So what are they doing?
What they are actually doing is evaluating your mental resources. There is a brilliant metaphor used in the analysis. Listeners are salivating over your backpack.
Wait, unpack that visual for me. What is in this backpack?
Imagine we are living in a hunter-gatherer tribe, and you're trying to figure out who to team up with for survival.
Mm,
You want the person with the best tools, right?
naturally, yeah.
In conversation, your mind is the backpack. When you drop a fascinating piece of trivia, or make a quick-witted joke, or casually mention a book you read, you aren't really trying to educate the listener.
I'm just unzipping my backpack to show them my surplus resources.
Exactly. You are signaling that you have a great memory, excess free time to acquire knowledge, a vast vocabulary, and good social connections.
Oh man, so when I'm at a party explaining the history of the Roman Empire, I'm just showing off my survival kit so people will want me in their tribe. I am never going to view small talk the same way again.
It's a constant audition.
Which leads right into consumption. We don't just show off our mental backpacks, we show off our physical goods. Like when I buy a car, my PR department says I bought it for utility, right? To get from point A to point B.
But the elephant knows that consumption is one of our loudest forms of status signaling.
Right.
Let's look at the mechanism of luxury marketing. The analysis points out a fascinating reality about advertisements for brands like BMW or Rolex. The vast majority of those ads are not actually aimed at potential buyers.
Wait, why spend millions advertising to people who can't afford the product?
Because a status symbol is utterly worthless if no one recognizes it. The goal of the massive marketing campaign is to create a shared cultural understanding of prestige and envy.
Oh, wow. They are aimed at potential coveters.
Exactly. The company has to educate the general public on how expensive and exclusive the car is. That way, when the actual buyer, the 1 in 1,000 who can afford it, drives that car down the street, everyone else instantly recognizes the luxury status being signaled.
That's brilliant and slightly evil. You aren't just buying the car, you are buying in the envy of the people who saw the commercial.
Yes, you're buying the social reaction.
Okay, but I have to challenge this framework when it comes to charity. I can accept that cars and conversations are selfish, but surely charity is pure. What about people who donate anonymously? How is giving away your hard-earned money selfish?
This brings us back to the Arabian babbler birds and competitive altruism. In evolutionary terms, we need to understand the difference between a zero-sum game and a positive-sum game.
Okay, remind me of the difference.
A zero-sum game means if I win, you lose. No one wants to be allied with or led by a purely zero-sum player because they will eventually turn on you. A positive-sum game means we can both win by cooperating.
Ah, so generosity is the ultimate signal to the group that you are a positive-sum player.
Correct. It signals you have massive excess resources, so much that you can afford to give them away, and that you are a safe, cooperative bet for leadership.
Because it shows you're willing to take a personal loss to benefit the group.
Yes. And even so-called anonymous donations often involve a tax write-off, or they are known to a spouse, or at the very least, they provide a private psychological glow.
That warm, fuzzy feeling.
Right, which reinforces the giver's own self-image as a powerful, successful provider. Pure, absolute altruism without any psychological or social signaling benefit is incredibly rare in nature.
Okay, let's look at medicine. When I go to a doctor because I have a broken arm, I just want my arm fixed. It's purely pragmatic. How on earth is healthcare a status game?
Obviously, fixing a broken bone is practical. But if we look at the broader institution of healthcare, particularly how it evolved, it serves a deeply social function known as conspicuous caring.
Conspicuous caring. Okay, what does that mean?
Historically, medicine wasn't very effective, but families still spent fortunes on healers and shamans. Why? Because spending resources on medical care for a loved one is a highly visible way to signal to the rest of the tribe, I value this person, I'm expending my wealth on them, and I am a loyal, caring ally.
That makes a lot of sense.
Furthermore, the kind of access to care we have signals our socioeconomic status. And interacting with the medical system provides a deeply comforting, albeit sometimes illusory, sense of control in the face of our own mortality.
Like we just want doctors to do something, even if it's just prescribing a placebo, because the action itself is the comfort.
Precisely. The ritual matters as much as the result.
And finally, we have to touch on politics. This is where the passions run highest.
Definitely. The analytical framework approaches politics not as a rational debate over policy, but fundamentally as a tribal competition for power.
Okay.
It operates on the mechanism of loyalty signaling. We like to think we support policies because we have rigorously analyzed the economic data. But more often than not, supporting a specific policy is simply a way to signal our unwavering loyalty to our specific group.
And our hostility to the opposing group, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's really important to highlight here that this dynamic is entirely neutral regarding who is actually right or wrong. It doesn't matter where you fall on the political spectrum, left or right, the psychological mechanism is exactly the same.
It really is. We all do it.
We use our political beliefs as a uniform. We put it on to say, I am on this team and I will defend my team's beliefs, even if they don't logically make sense, just to prove I am a loyal member. Policy beliefs frequently function as post hoc rationalizations for tribal allegiance.
Precisely. It is a study in how the human brain functions in groups, not a judgment on which group has the better policies.
Okay, so we've shined the floodlight on the elephant. We see these hidden, selfish, status-driven motives literally everywhere in our schools, our chats, our purchases, our voting booths. But I have to admit, as I process this, won't this just make me incredibly paranoid?
It's a risk, for sure.
If I wake up tomorrow and start second-guessing every single compliment, every smile, wondering what selfish motive is lurking underneath, won't I just become an isolated, cynical person? It feels like a psychologically dangerous way to live.
That is a very valid and very common reaction. And it's actually one of the main criticisms leveled at this kind of evolutionary analysis.
Okay, so the sources acknowledge this.
Yes. The source material itself acknowledges that this framework can adopt an overwhelmingly cynical tone. Critics also point out that while it synthesizes ideas from economics, biology, and psychology, some of its broader claims about human institutions rest on what they call a Jello foundation.
A Jello foundation, meaning what?
Meaning it's incredibly thought-provoking, but it lacks the rock-solid empirical data needed to definitively prove that every single action is secretly selfish.
Got it. So how do we process this information without losing our minds or our faith in humanity?
The analysis provides a really helpful character psychology pack to help us navigate this exact dilemma. They break our potential reactions down into three main personas.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, you have the unaware actor. This is the typical person who is completely blind to their hidden motives. They genuinely believe they act entirely for noble reasons.
So they're completely trapped in the PR department of their own self-deception.
Exactly. And that was probably most of us before exploring this topic.
That was definitely me before we started prepping for this deep dive.
Right, it's the default state. But the danger of learning all this is swinging too far to the opposite extreme, becoming the cynical observer. This is the paranoia trap you just described.
The hyper-aware, distrustful person.
Yes. The cynical observer is paralyzed by the reality of human selfishness. They see manipulative motives everywhere, even in moments of genuine warmth, and it makes them deeply unhappy and socially isolated.
So what's the middle ground? How do we see the truth without letting it ruin us?
The ideal persona to strive for is the compassionate realist. This person clearly sees the hidden motives. They acknowledge the elephant in the room, but instead of reacting with disgust or paranoia, they respond with profound empathy.
Empathy. How does that work?
They realize that we are all just primates, thrust into the exact same incredibly complex social landscape. They don't judge others harshly for being driven by status or signaling because they possess the self-awareness to recognize those exact same biological drives within themselves.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do you actually apply this tomorrow morning without becoming the cynical observer?
There is a practical 30-day challenge outlined to help integrate this knowledge healthily. Week 1 is simply passive observation.
Like just watching people.
Yeah. Notice the hidden motives in conversations or the signaling and the consumption around you, but do it without judging. Then week 2 turns inward for self-reflection. When you take an action, pause and ask yourself, what am I really trying to signal right now?
That's a tough question to ask yourself.
It really is. Week 3 is institutional analysis. Look at your workplace or your school through this new lens of costly signaling and tribalism. And finally, week 4 is integration, balancing this stark new awareness with genuine human compassion.
I love that progression. The framework offers this really powerful final mandate. Judge freely and accept that you too will be judged. It's the ultimate leveling thought. We aren't gods, we are primates. We are all playing the exact same game, using the exact same playbook.
We are. And pulling away the fig leaf to acknowledge that reality is the very first step toward actual grounded wisdom, rather than just stumbling through life in blind self-deception.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've talked a lot today about how self-deception and these flimsy little fig leaves are essentially the social glue that holds human cooperation together.
They definitely are.
They allow us to get along without constantly fighting over our selfish motives. But what would happen to a society that actually managed to completely cure itself of the elephant?
Oh, that's a wild thought.
Right. If we suddenly evolved to become 100% transparent with each other about our selfish, status driven motives, would our society evolve to a higher, more enlightened level of radical honesty?
Oh,
Or, without the polite fiction of the PR department, would human cooperation completely collapse overnight?
that is a profound question, and one that
Right.
really tests just how necessary our illusions might be.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden corners of your own mind. Until next time, go find your elephant.